Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so happy that you're part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is educator Rachel Giannini. She is the host of Quarantine with Rachel. Speaking of the great quarantine of 2020, if you're looking for a fantastic book to read aloud with your kids, please consider picking up The Last Surviving Dinosaur, the Tyrannosaurus, written by our friend Stephen Joseph and playfully illustrated by Andy Case. This book tells the story of how the dinosaurs became extinct, and it's not the life-ending meteor shower the paleontologists often tell you about. No, the Tyrannosaurus is so very cranky that she makes all the other bigger and meaner dinosaurs disappear. That is, until she comes across the only dinosaur who is immune to her incessant complaining, and that's the Tyrannosaurus. These two dinosaurs evolved into humans, and that is where cranky people come from. This really is a fun read-aloud book that your kids will love, and it also reminds readers to be mindful of when and how often they complain. A fantastic lesson from which all readers, young and old, can benefit. The Last Surviving Dinosaur is available online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many other book sites where books are sold. Check it out today. The Last Surviving Dinosaur, the Tyrannosaurus. Join us on the line right now from Chicago in Illinois. Our guest today is the lead, one of the lead subjects of a really important movie called No Small Matters. She's also the driving force behind what's a really important video vlog called Quarantine with Rachel. Please welcome to the show, Rachel Giannini. Rachel, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm really excited, too. First, we should talk about No Small Matters, if we can, because I think it's really important. It's an insight into how important early childhood education is.
Yeah, definitely. It is a feature-length documentary. You can check out all the info about its release at nosmallmatter.com, but it's a comprehensive look at everything that's going on between birth and 5 and how this is the most fundamental time for development and how we need to support these children's growth because the impact that we give to them now will greatly change our future.
It's not. This is one of the things that I think is really important for all of us to understand. If you're listening to the Reading with Your Kids podcast, you're probably engaged with I'm guessing you're probably engaged with your kids, and you probably read with your kids, and so they're going to end up most likely going to preschool, going to kindergarten with hearing a million more words than their peers who haven't had somebody reading to them constantly. But it's still an issue for us because those kids that are going to school with your kids, they're going to be facing challenges. And if we don't support them, it's going to impact their lives, and it's also going to impact our lives. And it seems to me that it's an easy kind of problem to figure out. Invest in educating these kids when they're young, when you can really make a difference in their lives.
Completely. There's all of this brain science that has come out of Harvard as well as longitudinal studies that approximately 90% of your brain is developed before you hit kindergarten. And if you think about who's living in that life of a child, when 11 million children spend an average of 34 hours a week in the care of somebody else, it's not only the parents and caregivers and grandparents, but it's those educators. Mm-hmm. So it's really amazing the impact that we have on our littles. And I love, one of my favorite things is talking to people about this. One, if you have children, you totally get it. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have children, this is a subject that they're not aware of, which I find fascinating because We don't talk about it, yet they're everybody's future. Just because you don't have a child doesn't mean that by the time you get older, these kids will be making choices for you. And I'd really like someone who's empathetic to make choices for me when I get bigger.
Yeah, and I really want young neighbors who are going to work together to make the neighborhood better. And I really don't want to pay to have a couple of million people locked up behind bars.
Exactly. One of the best solutions to prison reform is early childhood education. It's amazing. It's amazing how many things can be solved by just investing early on. Yeah. So the film really just goes to show a light on that. And we've done about 2,000 screenings so far across the country. It's extraordinarily well received, and we're really, really thrilled for it to be hitting theaters soon.
Well, I'm really excited about that, and I really encourage everybody to keep their eyes open for when you have a chance to see this. And you were talking about the fact that people are starting to get an appreciation of how much work it is to parent your kid, to educate your kid, to be an early childhood educator. We're recording this at the beginning of the great quarantine of 2020. And, it's only day, depending on where you are, it's only day 4 or 5, and already social media is flooded with memes homeschool my kids for an hour, and 2 of them are suspended, and the teacher is fired for drinking.
I saw that too.
I think people are really surprised at how challenging it is to work with young kids and how important it is. And hopefully when this is over, we're going to have a nationwide conversation about paying teachers what they deserve.
Completely. The average teacher in America makes, and this is shocking, $12.97. Mm-hmm. That is less than dog walkers. That is less than bartenders and valets and lots of other people. And the idea that their job is extraordinarily important is baffling. And I will say there is a serious level of satisfaction looking at social media and having all of my friends with children reaching out like, how do you do this? How do you do this every day? It's like, yes, I know. Trust me. I had 20 of them. You have 1. So, yeah. And guess what? They come back every day. So it's definitely shining a light on how incredibly difficult this job is. And, there's a little bit of satisfaction of like, okay, well, now that you all know, let's make some changes.
Let's do something about it. Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I'm so impressed with is, instead of taking this quarantine time to kind of sit back and kind of laugh at everybody and go, yep, I've been telling you, okay, I'm just going to take a vacation right now. You're being very proactive and you're creating Quarantine with Rachel so that we can continue to enrich our kids.
Yeah, it's funny when I was thinking about starting this. We were in Chicago. It was Saturday, and all the milling around was, okay, schools are going to close on Monday. And I live in a building that I have a downstairs neighbor who is adorable, and he's 4, and his parents are like, what are we going to do with him? And it hit me like, wow, there's a lot of people who haven't spent long periods of time having to entertain their child and do it in a developmentally appropriate way. You often can get caught up with your group of friends and think like, oh, everybody knows what I know. It's like, nope, no, they don't. Mm-hmm. So being able to provide little activities, little tips, little tricks that you can do that not only maybe mirrors what is going on at what normally happens in their school. Today we talk about calendar time and focusing on the weather. But yesterday was like, yo, your house is probably getting dirty. Guess what? Your 2-year-old can help you clean. Like there's all of these things that parents may not know that, like, yeah, I kind of want to help everybody because if I was a parent and didn't know what to do, sure as get out, I'd want someone to help me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things that really was eye-opening for me as probably about a year, maybe a year and a half ago, I was sitting down with my wife, who's been a teacher now for 33 years, and her best friend, who's a principal, and both of them are in the Boston Public School System, and they're serving inner city school system, so they're serving kids who come from a variety of backgrounds. And, I asked him, I said, what can I do with my podcast? What can I do, with a children's book that can really inspire those parents who aren't reading with their kids right now to read more? And they both sat down and they told me, a lot of our parents can't read. They can't. They never learned. They came from poor backgrounds. Now they're parents. They became parents maybe at 16, 17, whatever year old. They can't read. And a lot of our parents are from a different country. They can't read in English. And if they can read, and they can read in English, well, a lot of these parents are really poor, so they're coming home and they're working 2 or 3 jobs, and they're exhausted, and there is no time. But you and I were talking before we started, there's, if you can't read, that's a tragedy, but you can still have some quality time with your kids by doing things like cleaning and watching TV, but doing it together. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. Literacy has a lot of wonderful components other than word recognition. It really supports critical thinking and problem solving. And those are things that can happen all around the house, not just in front of a book. We were talking a little bit about the idea that if you're going to watch something, we all obviously would like to cut back on screen time, and it's really hard right now. So let's put on a movie, but let's watch it as a family. And pull out the remote control, hit pause, and ask your little, what's going on? That forces them to think about the story and put it in a sequence, put it in order. And I ask them, okay, so that's happened. What do you think is going to happen next? That's some seriously deep dive into the creative brain building. Then you watch and you can pause. It's kind of like if you remember those books from the 80s and 90s about choose your own adventure. It's kind of like doing that, but you're doing it with a movie, you're doing it with a television show. And then at the end, ask some questions. Did you think those were good choices? What do you think will happen next if the story was to keep going? And then at that point, all of those amazing skills that you get from reading a book, you kind of just transfer them into a different part of the house.
And it's really fun. I have to tell you, Rachel, I have this wonderful 16-year-old niece, and we love spending time together, and she often loves coming over. She has her own option for Netflix here in our home. And we watch movies together, and she's always thinking that I'm falling asleep. I don't know why. Might be the noises that are coming from me. But she'll stop the movie. She'll pause the movie, and she goes, "Hey, you're asleep." No, I'm not asleep. I'm awake. Okay, what's going on now? And thankfully, I can usually answer. But it is fun to kind of stop and pause and ask kids those questions. It really is fun, and it can really make the experience not only more educational, but much more enjoyable.
Oh, completely. I have such fond memories of my parents taking road trips and listening to a book on tape and then pausing it and saying, okay, what do you think is going to happen? And being able to have what would be normally a horrifically boring car ride brought into this idea that next thing you know, we actually don't hit play on the tape again because we're making up this entirely new story that's just coming from this really authentic place, and we're ripping on each other and we're adding to each other. And it's those memories that as an adult I hold on to and have really fond things like thoughts of long car rides, which is completely counterintuitive to most of society.
Hey, Richard, one of the things I've said, and I've been saying this from an intuitive place, but I really believe that when we take the time to ask our 2 or 3-year-old, what do you think of this? What do you think is going to happen next? What do you think of what this character of their choice? When we're asking our kids their opinion, when the most important person in that child's life is asking, hey, I value your opinion. I want to know what you think. I'm thinking that's incredibly empowering. Am I right about that?
You are 1,000,000,000% right about that. Nothing in a world that you don't even reach the doorknob, having the most important person in your life asking what you think and then legitimately looking into your eyes and nodding your head and listening thoughtfully. And that is so empowering. It makes every child, no matter the age, recognize that their opinion matters, their voice matters, and that they're taken seriously. And that is a gift all in itself. And I love that idea. That is something that we should be working on right now. And if you're able to, if your body deems it, then you know what? Instead of just tilting your head down, get down on your knees. Work in those squats. Maybe that's the time that you're doing this gym workout now. Get down and get on their level, eye to eye of like, tell me what do you think? Because children are extraordinarily capable, and if you were to ask them questions about just even what's happening in the world, you'd be amazed at what they're picking up on.
That's something that I learned, and I was kind of surprised that I learned, but I learned it when I was before I started doing my educational magic shows. I was working with kids with severe developmental disabilities, and it was kind of a new job. I was kind of thrown in there because I had this outgoing personality. I didn't have any kind of training working with kids with disabilities, kids in wheelchairs, kids with, weren't able to do a lot for themselves. And so when I started, I would bend at the waist and bend over to them. And one of the teachers said, why don't you try squatting? Why don't you try getting down on your knee? And it made such a difference. And I brought that over to the stage. And, when I would have somebody up on stage helping me, if there was, I'm pretty short anyway, so I don't have to bend that far. But, I would get down on my knees and I'd bend my knees. And it's incredible how many people notice it, and especially the person that I was standing next to or squatting next to.
There's something about being on somebody's level and creating a connection that's so much more authentic. And I truly believe that a 3-year-old, when an adult gets down on their level, they recognize that that's an effort that needs to be made. That there is something really important when someone takes the time. Like intuitively, that has to be in there.
Yeah. It's all these little things that we can do with our kids that just boosts their self-esteem and empowers them. It's incredible.
Yeah. And now's a really great time to work on that because it's a little bit uncertain out there, and maybe your kids are picking up on some of the news, but not all of the news. And because of the fact that we're experiential learners, this is something that none of us have experienced before. And there's a heightened level of nervousness involved. And being able to connect with our children, giving them power, giving through their voice, through their choices, through all of these things is, let's take this terrible situation and, let's put some silver lining on it.
Yeah. Hey, what is it, I'd love to know how you think we can take an ordinary walk around the block and turn that into not just a chance to get outside at a safe, socially distant space, but turn that from just a little bit of exercise into something that's going to help you grow closer with your kids.
I have. So first of all, next week in Chicago, supposedly the rumor is it's going to be 60. And we're planning on going for a walk and doing a film. So I love this. It's a little bit sneak peek. There's a lot of things you can do. One, you can do a scavenger hunt. Let's say your little is working on colors, so you have a super little. Then let's talk about, let's count how many red cars we can find. Like, these are conversations that, like, pull in math, pull in color recognition. We can talk about how many dogs we've seen, anything that has to do with counting. But one thing that's super empowering that I love is getting to the corner and asking your child, do you want to go right or left? Having them choose. You know where you live. You will get back there. Yeah. Do not worry. But giving your child this opportunity to not only work on spatial awareness, but having that power of, like, okay, because how many times do we ask a child which way do they want to go? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And say, okay, well, let's go that way. And then walking that way. And there's all of these different things you can do, pointing out who can spot the flowers, because it's spring and now flowers are coming up. What color are those flowers? Why do we have flowers? Like, all of these wonderful questions. Everything that's open-ended allows a child, there is no right or wrong. Just let them riff on whatever they think.
Yeah, there are a lot of kids, and you meet them when they get into middle school, high school. They never share their opinion. It's like, oh, no one cares about what I think. You start to let kids know that you care about what they think when they're 2, when they're 3.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Definitely.
How about you mentioned earlier that your 2-year-old can help you clean up around the house. What's a great way to kind of turn that into a bonding experience and not a hair pulling, get up and help me out kind of experience?
Yes. So my parents had 3 kids under 3 before they were 20. And I always remember that Saturdays were family clean days. Back in the 80s, it was all about the albums. So you would blindly pick an album, and then somebody else had to say A or B, because for all those younger kids listening, albums have 2 sides. And then you would play the entire album all the way through. And there was something really wonderful that cleaning a 3-bedroom apartment probably shouldn't have taken 8 hours, but it did. And because sometimes you would get distracted and you would sing, or you'd have a family dance party. But my parents weren't college educated. They didn't know what they were doing. They just knew what made them happy. And seeing their kids dance and clean while attempting to pick up their clothes or help dust, like those little things really makes fond memories. My husband and I don't have children of our own yet, but every Saturday we have a massive clean day where we put on an album and we just clean the house. So yeah, 2-year-olds are also super capable. Like if you put the dust cleanser on a towel or rag, they can dust themselves. Like children are the best dusters, especially they're so small and like they hit spots people never ever hit.
So we don't have to spray the dusting stuff on the kids' clothes and drag them around the floor. You're talking about actually giving them a rag.
I like your idea too. Spray it on their socks and have them walk around.
Oh man, one of the things we've talked about in a different context that kids. In terms of college, kids here from like a really early age, at 2 or 3 years old, you got to do well in school so you can get into a good college, and all this pressure to achieve and to get the right answer. How can we kind of change that so we can help our kids instead of learning be stressful, help them learn at an early age that learning is fun and is something. You don't do it to get a grade on a test. You do it to enrich your life, and it's something that you can do forever.
I love that. There is an amazing woman out there named Carol DeWitt, and she did this incredible study where she basically split 2 groups of, I believe they were 3rd graders, and gave them all the same quiz and basically said to half the group, great job, you guys got 8 out of 10, you are really smart. And then to the other group, she said, great job, you got 8 out of 10, you must have worked really hard. And then she does this continual series of experiments and vocabulary, which basically what comes out is the more we put a focus on being the best of getting everything right, the worse children do. But the more we champion those that work hard, those that are inquisitive, those that ask questions, the better they do. And that is something that we just need to start working on as a whole, as a society, of how are we talking to kids? How are we validating their thoughts and their experiences? Because children learn best through doing. Mm-hmm. And the idea that so much of our curriculum now is paper and pencil and not hands-on. Mm-hmm. And you're asking someone that's completely counterintuitive to how they learn and how they explore. And then you add on that additional pressure of, if you're not getting this right, then you don't get a star, or you don't get 100, or you don't get your name at the top of the list. Then that's a lot of pressure to feel when you're 7, 8, 9, 10, 25.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a lot of pressure for me, and I'm a lot older than 10.
Exactly. Exactly. But if you are in a low pressure environment where you're rewarding based off of what did you learn? Oh, that's amazing. You didn't know that before. What more can we find? And putting the growth internally as opposed to what is on that piece of paper it's staggering the difference we make.
Yeah. You know, I want to make sure that people know where they can find Quarantined with Rachel and find your website and learn more about you. But before you go, we talked early on about, you know, parents having this new appreciation, they're only home 2 days with their kids, so they're going to have this new appreciation of how hard early educators and teachers work, and that we should have a national conversation about compensating teachers for what they're worth and giving them the pay that they deserve. But what I also hope is that at this time, you know, you mentioned that kids, a lot of kids are spending 30, 40 hours in school or at a daycare. One of the conversations I would love for us to have as a nation and for families to have is to sit down and at the end of this quarantine time, sit down and say, it was really hard at first, but I loved spending time with you. And I'm really not happy that we're not able to spend more time together.
Yeah.
So we need to do something so that you don't have to be in daycare for 40 hours a week. And
Totally.
I don't need to kill myself and be out of the house.
Yeah, parents want to be home with their kids. I know right now that sounds a little bonkers, but they do. And the thing that I love more than everything is parents are their children's first and best teachers. Parents don't recognize the power in which they have in that child's life. And I can only imagine, I love this idea of sitting down and talk about, we've gone through some serious trauma. What really matters in our life?
Mm-hmm.
What do we value? What is our takeaway? Because we kind of have an opportunity to make some adjustments and reprioritize, because none of us have ever been through anything like this. The world will definitely look different after it. Well, is it going to look different for the better? Because focusing more on our children, on our environment, and less on all of the other things would probably just be very beneficial for us all.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm so happy. We're like, you know, on such, our brains are like functioning. We're talking through Skype, but it's almost like
I know, it's very concerning. I feel like I've known you forever.
Well, I've been alive for almost ever. I don't think you've been alive that long. Hey, Rachel, tell everybody where they can find Quarantine with Rachel and your website, because it's a really cool website.
Oh, I thank you. So let me spell my name because that's the hardest thing to get. So my name is Rachel, Rachel, easy smeezy, but then Giannini, Giannini. So if you look me up on Facebook, it's Rachel Giannini, simple, and you can see all of the Quarantine. That's also the name of my YouTube page. And the nice thing is Instagram, since those videos all of them are over a minute, I'm not really utilizing that platform except in the stories, which will have prompts for you to basically engage with your littles. So, for example, the other day we did choices, and there's about 50 stories all day for you to make choices with your kids. When we do the walk around the block, there'll be all of these different prompts. So it's spread out all over. And my website is Rachel Giannini, first and last name, at just rachelgiannini.com. And you can check out all these fun little videos.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited because, you know, it is a scary time right now. It is, we're venturing, you know, as Star Trek, you know, we're going to where man has never
no
gone.
Man has gone before.
Or, you know, a man, women, child, we haven't been there before. My dog hasn't been here before. And it is scary, but I'm really feeling hopeful. And I'm absolutely hope we're definitely going to get through this, and we're going to come out. But what I'm really excited about is I think that our priorities are going to change, and we're going to value family, value neighbor, value friendship so much more.
I love that, and I agree. Let's take every step with blindless optimism.
We've been speaking to the driving force behind Quarantine with Rachel Giannini. Rachel, I'm so happy that you spent this time with us today.
Me too. Thank you so much.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Katie Howe. She's going to be here to let us know how we can become a maker and get involved with our kids doing great STEM activities. It's a perfect episode now that we're all living through the great quarantine of 2020. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so very wonderful. Of course, I want to thank Rachel Giannini. Please be sure to check out Quarantine with Rachel. And also be sure to keep your eyes out for the film No Small Matters. Also want to thank our sponsor, the last surviving dinosaur, the Tyrannosaurus, written by our buddy Stephen Joseph. I want to thank the team who helps me put this show together every single episode. Of course, my amazing producer, Fatima Khan. She is amazing. And she's taking care of her beautiful new baby. He is so gorgeous. Also want to thank my author ambassador, Peggy Cotto. She's amazing. She also has a beautiful family of 3 beautiful young children. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. I want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I know you have so much to do. Thank you so much for meeting this challenge that we are all experiencing during the quarantine, doing what we can to stop the virus, maintaining social distancing, being inside with your kids, spending quality inside with your kids. Like, that's so very important. And most of all, thank you so much for making the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.